Top of the morning, everybody. Really good to see you. I'm Emerson Lancia. She is Jesse Cofield. You are watching The Sweat presented by DraftKings. So we're going to talk a lot of sports betting, a lot of DFS stuff from, we got some NFL because the NFL draft is coming up.
So soon.
We're going to have some NHL because there's a fat one-game slate tonight. Also, the PGA Tour heading south of the border. We also are going to talk a little bit of baseball, but we have to start in the NBA.
Oh, yeah.
Because last night, social media was just brimming with people ready to torch Ben Simmons when it was announced that he would not be playing in tonight's do-or-die Game 4 against the Celtics. And one of the most notable reactions, look at this right here on your screen, was from broadcaster and Hall of Famer Reggie Miller.
Yeah, calling out Simmons saying, this dude has zero competitive fire. He even added the hashtag man up.
Yeah, I know. And it's tough because you see him in that outfit there, and you see some of the pics floating around on Twitter as well. And it's just like the Nets getting destroyed by the Celtics, and he's just standing back there like all derpish.
It's one of those things, too, where it's like, from an outsider perspective, he's like getting all like dressed up in these like bougie fancy outfits for these games to sit on the bench, and everyone's like, bro, what are you doing? Like maybe even like just wear like normal clothes, and the public's reaction might be a little less.
It just seems like he's really dialed in more to his outfit, where he put that effort into like rehabbing his back injury, which you haven't played in a year. How do you have a back injury? Whatever. At the very least, Simmons not playing tonight means he's going to avoid becoming the first NBA player to get eliminated from the playoffs in 2 consecutive games. Let's see what our NBA panel thinks of this whole situation. DraftKings contributor Jeff Pratt, DK Nation's Chinmay Vaidya. We got 3 games tonight here, dudes. Celtics looking to break out the brooms in Brooklyn. It's essentially a pick-em on the DK Sportsbook. So who likes the home team's chances of extending its season? Jeff, do you?
Emerson, you know the answer.
Yeah, I knew it was no.
No, I don't. It still feels wrong to even think about the Nets getting swept in this series, considering they have the most talented basketball player on the planet, along with Kyrie Irving. But it feels like Brooklyn is ready to pack it in and go home tonight. Kevin Durant's completely rattled. He has no answers for the Celtics defense. Kyrie Irving has consistently talked about how Boston has been gelling since Christmas, and this Nets team just doesn't have that chemistry yet, when it's his fault that they don't. It sounds like Ben Simmons, as you guys were talking about, just called out of work because he realized coming back down 3-0 just doesn't make any sense for him or the Nets at this point in the season. The Celtics have had an answer for everything Brooklyn has thrown for them throughout this series, thrown at them, and it feels like they're one major punch away from knocking the Nets down for good.
All right, Chinmay, which side you on tonight? This thing over?
I agree. I think this thing is over, and the Nets have lost all confidence. You see it from Durant. He's talked about how he was honestly said he was thinking too much in this series. Kyrie has basically been resigned to the fact that the series is over, talking about their chemistry and how they weren't able to gel. And the Celtics have just played better on both ends of the floor for 3 games now. The Nets have had chances in all 3 games, really, to take a lead and hold a lead, and they just haven't done it. And the Celtics have showed consistently why they're the better team. They're able to come back from deficits multiple times. And they just have, I think, the best player on the floor in this series in Jason Tatum. And Kevin Durant hasn't stepped up to the challenge yet. The Celtics have completely taken him out of the game plan. And I think in the last game, he didn't attempt a single shot in the 4th quarter. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But that's just not the KD that we're used to seeing. And he's out of it in this series. The Nets are out of it. They're ready to go into the offseason. I'm taking the Celtics tonight.
All right, guys. Raptors also facing elimination tonight. Down 3 games to 1. This series is back in Philly, where the Sixers are favored by 7 points. So will Toronto put up a fight tonight? Like, what do you think, Chinmay?
We got some early injury news on Toronto with Fred VanVleet being ruled out, which is a bit uncommon. Typically, Toronto plays things a little closer and waits until game time. But I do like the 76ers in this one to bounce back after a pretty poor showing from the backcourt in Game 4. I think they come into Philly and take this game. So give me the 76ers to close this one out tonight, even though Embiid has struggled a bit since that thumb injury has come about. I still think he's putting up great numbers, and I like James Harden and Maxey to recover from a poor Game 4 and show out in Game 5. So give me Philadelphia to close this thing out. They'll cover here.
All right, Jeff, do you agree?
Toronto will put up a fight, I think that's what they do. They have a ton of tough guys, and they have the better coach in this series. Unfortunately, they just don't have enough talent to keep up with Joel Embiid and the Sixers. I will say this. We saw this idea circulating on Twitter yesterday. If you're going to write a story about a team blowing the first 3-0 lead in NBA history, building that team around Doc Rivers, James Harden, and a banged-up Embiid sounds like your best bet at it happening. Realistically, Philly's going to take care of business at home and move on, especially with Fred VanVleet out, as Chinmay alluded to. I don't love their chances against Miami in the second round, though, assuming the Heat move on against the Hawks.
All right, well, now we have also like Jazz and Mavericks. That's the late one tonight. So it's all tied at 2 games apiece here. Game 5 tonight in Dallas. So like Doncic's return in Game 4, that wasn't enough to take down Utah as they even the series. That now goes back to Dallas. So how much do you like the idea of the Mavs covering the 3-point spread here, Jeff?
I like it. This has been a really ugly series, and I'm expecting it to go 7 games at this point. Anytime a player with a usage rate the size of Luka's returns after a key stretch, there's an adjustment period. The Mavs definitely looked a little lost with him out on the court at times, but I expect them to make those necessary adjustments and for Dallas to cover the spread at home here. It's not like I've been thoroughly impressed with the Jazz either. Feels like Quinn Snyder got everything he could out of this current group 2 years ago, and it's been nothing but downhill since then. Dallas is the better team with the best player in this series. That should be enough to get it done at home for them tonight.
Yeah, Chinmay. I mean, the Jazz had the league's #1 offense in the regular season, but man, they've been just totally befuddled by Dallas's defensive scheme.
This is classic Utah in the playoffs. They've just been bad ever since Snyder took over in the postseason. And even last year, they had the #1 overall seed, and they lost to the Clippers after Kawhi Leonard went out with that injury. So they have been disappointing in the postseason, to say the least. And I agree with Jeff here. I think Dallas takes this one and covers. There's going to be an adjustment period whenever a player like Doncic comes back. And even with that adjustment period, it took Donovan Mitchell passing to Rudy Gobert, which has been one of the kind of crazy NBA narratives of the season. It took a Donovan Mitchell pass to Rudy Gobert to beat the Mavericks when the Jazz were at home, and it was a 1-point game. So it took a lot for the Jazz to still get this win, even with Doncic coming back. I like the Mavericks at home in this one. I think Doncic has another big game, and give me Dallas to take a 3-2 series lead after tonight.
All right, Chinmay, let's talk DFS now. Who is worth paying up for? It's a 3-game slate.
Realistically, I think there's only 2 options that you should pay up for. Luka Doncic is one of them. He's going to be important and impactful in all 3 categories on the stat sheet. And Jason Tatum. I think those are the 2 best players on this slate, and those are the guys that you really want to pay up for tonight. So give me Tatum and Doncic as the guys to headline your DFS lineup.
Jeff, who are you paying up for?
Can someone please explain to me how Kevin Durant is more expensive than Jason Tatum on tonight's slate? KD hasn't scored more than 40 DK fantasy points throughout this series, and he comes in at 10K. Is he due for a big performance? Maybe. But I lean towards the opposite and say that he's ready to pack it in, as we touched on earlier in this segment. You know who's not ready to pack it in, though, is Jason Tatum. I'm rolling with you, Chinmay. He's coming off a monster 65.25 fantasy point performance, in which he racked up 39 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, and 6 steals. He's only the 4th most expensive player on tonight's slate. That's something that I think you need to take advantage of. Last game is the first time we've seen Tatum at his best offensively throughout this series, and we know that when he gets hot, it's typically for extended stretches. The Celtics can feel Brooklyn's morale dying, and I think Tatum should have another monster performance as they go for the sweep.
I mean, Jeff, maybe DraftKings started giving points for turnovers. If that's the case, he does deserve to be more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
What about a value play, dude? Who do you like tonight?
I like Reggie Bullock. He struggled for the majority of the season with Dallas, but he's really stepped it up in the playoffs. He scored 24-plus DK fantasy points in all 4 games in this series against Utah, hitting 3+ threes in each of those contests as well, which is what he's paid to do. What really jumps out, though, is how many minutes Bullock has played for the Mavs. He's barely gotten a rest in this series, playing 44 or more minutes in all 4 games. Luka Doncic's back in the equation for Dallas. All eyes will be on him, which should only open up more opportunities for Reggie.
Chinmay, where are you going?
I'm going in the same game, but I'm going on the other side of the ball. I'm taking Jordan Clarkson. he had a really poor showing in game 1, but since then he's really turned it around and had that monster effort in game 4, which ultimately helped the Jazz even the series. And the Mavs have locked in on Donovan Mitchell, especially at the end of games. So I like Clarkson, who's getting more run in these games and also is closing games for Quinn Snyder's Jazz. So give me the swingman who has been explosive off the bench for Utah to be the value play tonight. I believe he's still under 5K on DK.